Sashi Kuki Joshin Eto Chan Rira Vinci Linde Impali Sangye Shindu Mikte Uardi Drakun Nanda Shingla Shuparsho Yidam Guru Ragnamanda Kamnirasayami Sangye Shriram Soki Shoknam La Jamchu Bardu Dagni Karsuchi Jaki Jinyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Panchir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Shuram Soki Choknam La Jamchu Bardu Dagni Yapsuchi Dagi Jinyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Panchir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Churam Soki Choknam La Jamchu Bardu Dagni Yapsuchi Dagi Jinyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Panchir Sangye Druparsho.
We're going to start with I'll try to keep it to about 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minute meditation. So that means you get two options. One is you can be seated just like the way you are, if that's comfortable for you. Another one that I also recommend, that I have made jokes about, not to you, but just my own perception of it, that's actually very, very important and helpful, is to do in supine pose, which is like Shavasana, lying down. I will just ask that if you do decide to lie down, just make sure your feet is either directed away from the teaching space. So it's either the back of the room or the right or the left side of the room, that's fine. But get comfortable. And we'll just do a nice 10-minute meditation. And if you feel like lying down is going to be too much of a hassle, don't. It's not. It's actually. Close your eyes and just relax. I want you to just take a moment and first begin to relax. As we let the awareness descend from the top of our head all the way down to the ground. Or for those of you that are lying down, think of it from the tops of your body to the ground. Begin to settle the body so it's completely at ease. We spend all our days, most our days, focused so much in moving forward and pushing and reaching goals. Commit to the next 10 or so minutes to be completely relaxed and let go. And begin to breathe. Almost as if you're relearning how to breathe. Most of us have breathing patterns that are quite dysfunctional. So begin to start allowing your breath to flow with no affliction in its complete natural state. Don't force the breath to be short or long. Now let's begin to settle the mind in its most natural state, releasing all the concerns, all your hopes and fears. Releasing it into the stillness, releasing it into the present moment. Begin to see if you can be so relaxed that you almost have a clarity of your awareness. And just for a moment, rest there in this flow of sheer knowing, of just being aware of being aware. There's nothing to do here but simply to relax at this point. So if your mind is distracted, bring it back to your breath and see if you can just do nothing. Let it go. And let it go even deeper. Now you should be so still and relaxed that you can stay in this posture the remainder of this meditation. And so from the stillness, let's pose a question to ourselves. There's only one question, but no right or wrong answers. The question is, what is, for you right now, today, what is your vision of what would truly make you happy? What would bring you the fulfillment and the joy and satisfaction, the contentment you've been wanting for so long? What is that happiness that is your heart's desire? Your vision of your own flourishing. Can you see it? As it comes to mind, your own vision, and in the spirit of loving kindness for yourself, every time you breathe out, arouse the aspiration. May it be so. May I find such well-being and such happiness. There's going to probably be a mix of a conventional outer way of what this happiness may look like, which is okay and necessary. But also try to see if there is a more meaningful approach that comes with wisdom. So with every out-breath, as if breathing life into your vision, this loving aspiration for yourself, use your breath around this aspiration. And begin to boldly move into the realm of possibility, imagining here and now, realizing and owning your heart's desire, the joy and happiness you wish to seek. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Did we lose anyone? Everyone okay? Yeah, I know. Is that okay? Just getting a little pulse in the group. How was that? Good? It was nice. It was lovely, yeah. We're going to build on that. So I'm going to do this in a couple of different ways. There's meditations that are in your homework assignment that will be written out, so you'll see what that is. And there's also going to be meditations that I'll lead that I think definitely relate in the context of it, but it's not specific. So you can choose one or the other. I will recommend, though, just based on my own personal experience, it does help you, actually wherever you are in your meditation, to stay with one meditation for quite some time. It makes you understand it a little bit more. You start to see patterns of where you get stuck, where you don't want to do it, where you evolve. It's sometimes I think there's so many different meditations out there, and although it's nice to kind of have this like poo-poo platter of these different flavors you can try, to be able to just stick with one that works for you and something that you like. So that's the other thing. Don't meditate on something you don't want to do. No, let me rephrase that, because actually a lot of times there are topics of meditation I don't want to do. Don't meditate on something that doesn't inspire you. Okay? Because actually most of us are, I would say all of us are expert meditators. We just don't meditate on the things that bring us wisdom. Like this meditation is a really interesting one for me. And it's actually, this is only a quarter of the entire meditation. So we'll try to build on it and do pieces of it so you can see where this goes. But this first part of it is, it's so obvious and so kind of like, oh, I'm doing a meditation about what I want to do, like what I want in my life, like how amazing and wonderful. And yet for myself, I don't know if this is for you, but when I sit and do it, it's really hard for me to stay with it. And I've been trying to see where my obstacle is. And the fact is that I spend most of my day thinking about that very topic, but I do it from a place of scarcity. I do it from a place of the things I don't have in my life, rather than a place of abundance, of envisioning like, this is what I want, instead of being like, I don't have this stuff, right? Like, these are the things that are so difficult in my life, and these are the people that are getting in the way. And I spend most of my time from that place. And when the cup becomes half full, right? When it's not, if I said to you, meditate on the stuff that get in the way of your life, the things that you wish were better, it would usually pop up a little faster, I think. For this one, it gets slippery. I'm like, this is an awesome topic. This is the topic I want to talk about. This is the subject that I'm interested in. And yet, when it comes directly to the actual topic, my mind gets really slippery. And sometimes it gets bored. And I'm like, how can it get bored when it's the topic that I'm so interested in? That's why I came to Dharma. Like, how do I manifest the life that I want, right? Why are we in how karma works? Most of us, I don't know about all of you, but it's the feeling I get is most of us are in how karma works, is we're like, how do we use it as a tool to change all this crap that's happening in my life? Like, whether it's the partner or the business or the employees or your landlord or, your parents, or the list goes on. And yet when there's a very simple proposition of, well, let's play with it. Let's envision it and embody it and start looking at what does your world look like? Start to see, like, can you play from a place of abundance? And is that something, or is this kind of like your jam and you're right in it and you're like, this is so cool, I can do it? Or, start to see from what perspective you're playing with it. And that's why I think it's an interesting thing. Like, stick with one meditation. It also makes it a richer conversation too when we do have our Dharma dates, so that I can get a sense of where you're coming from and what are things that are getting stuck for you, or what are the topics that you're specifically interested in, rather than jumping around. But those are just things that I've noticed for myself, which I thought was interesting and I wanted to share. Okay, so going into course 5, we're finally here. We kind of did a preliminary last week. So I'll just do the usual kind of disclaimer just so that you know. My responsibility of being a teacher here and teaching the ACI is simply to pass on what knowledge I have to you. I will do my best, and it is actually your responsibility. So this is a two-way street. I'm not here for your entertainment, and so we have to work together. We're doing this together. So my part is going to be preparing and making sure that I deliver the message that I've learned that's been passed down from. So there's a lineage base, right? So everything in this lineage, which is actually really lovely, is that the Galupa lineage and this organization, the Three Jewels, were very lineage based. So it comes from Pobonga Rinpoche to Ken Rinpoche to Geshe Michael to then John Stillwell. Then that was passed down to me. And we're in an oral lineage. And so my job is to be able to pass along that message and be clear about when it's my opinion versus what's in the scripture. It's your job to poke holes and ask questions and do the practice and see how it applies to you or not. And I said this last time in class too, like whatever we learn in this class together, it's not something that you need to take by faith only. Ask the questions. Shakyamuni Buddha would talk about that in scriptures in the past that we've talked about in Course 1 and Course 2. It's the wonderful thing about this practice that I found is that there is a place where we can ask questions, and this should be a place where we get to workshop these ideas and see how it makes sense and if it's relevant or not, or where it works for us or not. Okay. When we first started today, which we didn't do last time, was the mandala offering, which just happens in the very beginning. And so any of you that don't want to participate with that, that's totally fine. If you do, you know the drill. There is a link that I sent almost everyone. If you did not get an email from me that was very long, I'm sorry for that, but keep it in your inbox and save it and flag it. There's folders in the Dropbox where you'll see this hand thing that we're doing. If you don't know what that is, your groups that we started last week, and we'll kind of make sure we identify that again after break so that you know. And if you don't have one, find a group. But they're usually groups of 3 to no more than 4. But that's a great place where you can ask somebody like, hey, what's that thing that they're doing? I don't know what it is. Or if you have questions, I know that when I came into the course of the ACIs and the Three Jewels, I felt very embarrassed to ask. Like, I didn't know it was appropriate or not. Or is it like secretive? Or do I just like pay my dues and just watch? Or it was just always really difficult. And I don't think it needs to be that way. But I know in a bigger group, sometimes it's harder to ask questions boldly. So I thought that these small little groups is a place where you can feel safe and ask questions that you might be too embarrassed to ask openly. But again, this is a place where you can ask. What else? I think that's it for the intro. Okay. So here we go. First class of every course, we go to where our source is, which I think is pretty awesome. I've been to a few different types of Dharma talks or spiritual talks, and I never know where it's coming from, which makes me very nervous. I feel the same way, I'll be honest, with yoga teachers too. I'm like, what is your bio about? And I always read the bios of teachers to know what lineage are they coming from. Is it actually something that's legitimate? You know, is it an authentic source? So here we have Master Vasubandhu. Can you say Lopan Yignin? And we're starting with the treasure of House of Knowledge, the Abhidharma Kosha. Okay, that's what we're going to start with. It's 150 pages long. Master Vasubandhu, we use the word master in a way of reverence and respect when we talk about certain masters or teachers within the lineage. Lopan, so Vasubandhu is Sanskrit, just so you know, and Lopan Yingyen is Tibetan. And I'll just try to do my best to show you both of them at all times. I won't put the Tibetan actually up there. But I will give it to you in the way it's pronounced. We've talked about Master Vasubandhu in the past. Does anyone remember his story? He had a mom and a brother. His brother is kind of well known. Yeah.
Isn't he a Sanga's twin?
Yes. Yes.
His mom was a nun, had a vision. She'd have like the two most famous teachers of Buddhism. She married a king.
Yeah.
And had a Sangha and Vasubandhu.
That's right. Yes. So there was a mum who was a nun that disrobed after she was clairvoyant, and she had a dream that this was a time when Tibetan Buddhism was really going downhill, and was clairvoyant and had a dream that if she were to disrobe and have children, that it would actually save the teachings. So she had a son, one that was a king and one that was a Brahmin. So we'll have Master Vasubandhu, and sometimes you'll hear Master Asanga, the two brothers that pretty much wrote most of the texts that are currently used in monasteries today. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so from the Abhidharma Kosha, written by Master Vasubandhu, we are reading, we're not going to be using the actual text. We're going to be using... Sorry, is this showing?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We're going to be using a commentary of the text from His Holiness the First Dalai Lama. Can we say Gyalwa Gendun Drup?
Gyalwa Gendun Drup.
And he wrote The Illumination of the Path to Freedom. And the Sanskrit is Tarlam Selje. No, I'm sorry, the Tibetan is Tarlam Selje. So the first Dalai Lama actually was not very well known in the histories of all the Dalai Lamas, but he was one of Jason Koppa's students. He was not really the most popular disciple, but nonetheless had the virtue and the karma to be born a Dalai Lama. The story of His Holiness the Dalai Lama was that he was born in a peasant camp, and bandits had attacked the camp. And his mother had hid him in a basket, and there was a bird that came and protected him until all the bandits left. And he was found by Tesha Limpa. He was protected, and then as he grew up, he later founded what's called Tesha Limpa Monastery that's still working around today. Okay. So the reason why we have commentaries that are used is that back when they were the teachings were first delivered, it was meant to be sung from master to disciple, and it was memorized, and they were also written in code. So a lot of the times you'll have teachings that would say things like 5 act towards 4, or 4 acts to support 7. Or 3 are supposed to do X, right? So it's written in these codes. And if we were to read those today, it would absolutely make no sense to us. And so what's happened whenever we talk about these commentaries is that we have the original teachings. And then at some point, when the teachings began to be written down in language, in written form, that's when we start having commentaries. So sometimes we'll have multiple commentaries that you'll see, kind of different versions of it. For the teachings that we're going to have for this system will be His Holiness the Dalai Lama's commentary. Okay? Good? All right. I'm just going to throw this up there because we're going to be talking about schools. And this is a chart that I made in, I think it was ACI 3 or 2. Remember this? Some of you? I flipped it though because anyway, originally it was the other way around. So I just wanted to throw this up there so that you have it. It's the 4 main schools that are up there that were created in ancient India. And basically they're broken into 2 systems. You have Hinayana and Mahayana. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but what you do need to know is that what we'll be studying is in the Abhidharma and the Abhidharma Kosha, which is in the functionalist school, also known as Hinayana, which we'll talk about. But I just wanted to give you a context and overview. While we're here talking about Hinayana and Mahayana, does anybody know the difference? Yes.
Hinayana is concerned primarily with the individual practitioner's freedom, and Mahayana is concerned with everyone.
Yeah.
I'll have to go.
Yeah, you and everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense? So sometimes when you go into different Tibetan traditions, you'll hear that word a lot, like, oh, it's a Hinayana practice, it's a Mahayana practice. And what that means is it's going to tell you about what capacity in which the teachings are. It does not mean that Hinayana practitioners are lower than a Mahayana practitioner, but it does mean that in these systems, in these schools, it's considered a lower scope. Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm going to move on. Everyone took their pictures. I feel like a celebrity up here, but no one's taking a picture of me. Yes.
Vasubandhu founded the Abhidharma school and Madhyamika school?
You know, I don't know if he founded the Madhyamika school, but I do know he founded the Abhidharma school. Yeah. I can find out who founded the Madhyamika. Yeah. Okay. Can we say Numpa?
Numpa,
Chu.
Chu,
Zu.
Zu.
Again, Numpa.
Numpa,
Chu.
Chu,
Zu.
Zu.
Okay, so the Sanskrit is Abhidharma Kosha. And in your homeworks, it will ask, like, give us the Tibetan of Abhidharma. And it's actually written as Chu Numpa. So that's just a pointer. If you submit it with Numpa Chu, that's fine too. But it's technically reversed. Okay, so Numpa Chu Zu, Abhidharma Kosha. Abhi means up to and approaching. Chu or Dharma means existing thing. And Zu is treasury. Sometimes you'll hear it as the treasury or the treasure house of higher knowledge, or the treasure house of knowledge. So Abhidharma, from what we saw right before in the chart, is one of the older forms of Buddhism in India. It comes out of the Hinayana system, or sometimes you'll hear it as Theravada. Those are a lot of words, but the main thing that you need to know and take away is that the Hinayana system, just like Emmett had said, it just means that there's a different motivation. So there's kind of two different motivations that are out there within the Buddhist space, I guess we'll call it. One is you are deciding that you are trying to seek freedom and remove suffering out of your life for your own self. That's the Hinayana system. And that means that if you're in the Hinayana system, where does that take you? Where's the ultimate goal? Nirvana, right? So you have nirvana, and then the Mahayana system means that you're not just saying, I'm going to take myself, but rather it's me, and I'm taking all of you too. It kind of like the way I think about that has been in the superpower space or the superhero space. Whenever you think of superheroes, they're not just saving themselves. Like Iron Man isn't just looking out for him. He's looking out for him and the rest of you. Okay, maybe. It depends on his motivation. That's true. But the idea is that it's you and everyone else, right? And when that happens, and that feeling you have is what we call what? Bodhicitta, right? You've heard this word bodhicitta. And what does bodhicitta mean? Oh, a little louder. Awakened mind, right? So you have what's called bodhicitta, that's a part of that, and that allows you to propel you into the path of reaching what? Where? Buddhahood, also known as enlightenment, okay? So you have these two different tiers. And we've had discussions in the past, which I know some people will probably ask, so I'm just going to put it out there. I think there was a debate, and it's an ongoing debate in the monasteries. If you get into nirvana, at some point, can you then level up to enlightenment? There are many discussions about it. I do not have the answer. Perhaps at some point when we're there all together, we can discuss about it and be like, that was the answer. But there are many debates about that. There are some systems that say, yes, you can, and some that say no. Okay. All right. So the Abhidharma Kosha and the Abhidharma, even though, oh yes.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
maybe it's too complex an answer, but
What's the difference between nirvana and enlightenment?
No, that's exactly what we were just talking about. So nirvana means that you're reaching, it means that your motivation, your intention comes from you saving yourself.
I get that.
Yes.
difference.
Uh-huh.
But once you, I don't know, I think of enlightenment or Buddhahood as this kind of sci-fi, all knowing, all seeing.
Uh-huh. Oh, but you mean like once you're ultimately there, what are there different powers that you have? Like the
Right.
nirvana
Right.
power is going to be different than the enlightenment
Right.
power. From what I know, I've never heard of your powers being any different. It's just a matter of, do you want to be there alone or do you want all the other beings there with you? Is what I've heard.
Gee, can I answer?
Oh, sure. Uh-huh.
They say in Nirvana, it's the permanent cessation of all suffering. And then the only difference in Buddha is that you have omniscience.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess that if that's like
That.
considered a power, then that would be the difference in power. Does anybody have anything to add? I saw a couple hands
Well,
up.
I was saying, like, I think the big differentiation, like how you're saying, is the cessation of all mental afflictions. You're not necessarily escaping the wheel.
No, you are.
You're outside.
In
the
Nirvana.
You're
wheel.
outside?
In Nirvana, you're outside the
Yeah.
wheel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think in Buddhahood you
Yeah.
have a couple more powers
Yeah.
than just omniscience though. Like I think when you're a Buddha you can emanate, but if you're in
That's true.
Nirvana you can't emanate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, do you want a mind that never feels any pain and always feels really good? Or like if you're motivated by the love of all beings, then you must be able to take the shape of everything that they need, which is why a Buddha would emanate. And I think there's a couple other things that I don't remember.
I will find out. Does that answer? At least start to?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was very helpful.
Okay. So even though the Abhidharma Kosha or the Abhidharma is within the Hinayana and the Theravada systems, it is still accepted by all the higher schools. So even though it's something that all the four lineages of the Tibetan systems follow it and use the texts, the Abhidharma Kosha specifically is used to study the Abhidharma. So in the four different lineages, which are the Nyingma, the Kagyu, the Galupa, which is where we're at, and the Sakya. And sometimes you'll hear those terms or not. I guess depends where you're at. All four of those lineages still use the Abhidharma Kosha to study the Abhidharma. When we hear the word treasure in the definition, the reason why you hear the word treasure or treasury happens to be because originally the Abhidharma Kosha the koshas were 7 treasures, and we only have one of the 7 treasures that have been left. So the other ones have been destroyed and were not saved. But just so you know, the word treasury comes from the 7 treasures that Master Vasubandhu had created. Okay? No, it's pretty, right?
I don't know.
That's good. Well, now you know. Let's see. The one thing to also just note in the school of Abhidharma, because of the school it's in, they actually don't speak about it in terms of emptiness. When we have this conversation, right, it's going to be around the concept of no self. Do you remember that? We talked about that around ACI 2, I think. 2 and 3, the different schools. So in this system, in the Abhidharma system, it's not called emptiness or the direct perception of emptiness, but rather having the experience of no self. Okay? So just something to differentiate. We'll go into what that really means more. Okay. So there are 2 types of Abhidharma. If your homework asks, like, what's the definition of Abhidharma? The short version of that would also just be knowledge, in case you want a little support on the homework side. So the first type of Abhidharma is Sherab. Can we say Sherab?
Sherab.
Again, Sherab.
Sherab.
So Sherab means unstained knowledge or wisdom. Does anyone have an idea of what that would possibly mean if something is unstained? Or no, I'm sorry, unstained versus stained. What would like an unstained knowledge be? Yes, both. Both would work. Or let's flip it. What would a stained mind be? Or stained knowledge?
Gravity.
Just the mind with ignorance.
Yeah, like any type of ignorance, right? So stained and unstained. So in the two types of Dharma, one is Sherab. It's the higher knowledge, which is an unstained mind. It's the wisdom that brings you up to nirvana. It also consists of 3 higher paths. I know there's going to be a lot of numbers, so just stick with me here. There's 3 higher paths out of the 5 paths. You don't need to know this, but if you are interested, does anyone remember the 5 paths? The first one starts with an A.
Accumulation.
Good. The second one with a P.
Preparation.
The third one.
Seeking.
The fourth one.
Habituation.
And the last one.
No more.
Great. So this Abhidharma school actually includes the latter 3. It does have path of seeing, habituation, and no more learning. And why does that matter that it has those things? Why do you think it matters that you have those things in there, in the Abhidharma?
It's a full path.
It's a full path, and it's a full path to where? To liberation. So basically what it's saying is that you need to have a path to be able to be liberated. And there is a path to know self in order to experience that, in order to reach nirvana, right? Because Abhidharma, at the end of the day, the Abhidharma Kosha, it is a scripture that's a path. It's trying to get you somewhere, right? So that's what they're saying. The second Abhidharma type of sorry, I moved too fast. Let's try this again. The second type of Abhidharma is Jedrang. Can we say Jedrang?
Jedrang.
Again, Jedrang.
Jedrang.
And it's the definition is things following behind or hanging. Another way to say that is like accessories to knowledge, or things that support your knowledge or your wisdom. So there's kind of like 2 accessories. If you want to know, one is called nominal accessories and the other one is called real accessories. You don't really need to know them for your homeworks, but if you'd like to know, the nominal accessories are basically the wisdom you were born with, books that you read, things that you listen, teachings, contemplation. Real accessories are things like state of mind and concentration. But Jedrang overall, when it's accessories, it's really the helpers to higher knowledge. So you have one Sherab that's really about wisdom. It's about the understanding of the path, understanding no self, and the other part of it is really the accessories of it, the elements that really support and foster that path. Good? Just so you know, class 1 is usually the driest out of all of them. I tried to make it interesting with graphics. Okay, so we have 8 chapters in the Abhidharma Kosha that we're going to be looking at. The first one is the presentation of the categories of existence. With the Tibetan underneath. Can we say Ne Dangpo?
Ne Dangpo.
Kam Tempa.
Kam Tempa.
Again, Ne Dangpo. Contempla. Okay. And this is the stained and unstained. That's the first chapter. So what we said was stained is really having ignorance or wrong view, right? Things that come from a place of, it's tainted. Anything that is produced from bad thoughts, things that are led to bad things. Most of us have more stained thoughts throughout the day. There are actually very few unstained things that you can experience, of which both of you had said a version of one, right? Can you say it again?
The direct perception of emptiness.
Yeah. Like experiencing ultimate reality. So sometimes you'll hear me say, or you'll hear in teachings, you'll hear direct perception of emptiness or ultimate reality. Yes.
When you say bad thoughts, do you mean leading to outcomes that we don't want, or do you mean incorrect?
That's a great point. I would say thoughts that are ignorant that lead to thoughts that are, I would actually rephrase that and say ignorant thoughts. Yeah. Not so much of a judgment of like good or bad. Yeah. Like ignorant thoughts, not understanding and having a worldview of where those thoughts come from. Yeah. And, that's the thing too, like while we're going through this, I would just ask that all of you, and I'm saying this to you and to myself at the same time, just like take it easy on yourselves and on each other. Because it's very easy to get into these classes and get so intense and be really hard on yourself. Like, that was bad, or I need to do this, or it like weighs down, and you're not going to stay in the game for that long. You'll get burnt out. And there are burnt out Dharma practitioners, for sure. So just, take little bits, don't be lazy, and apply what you can, but also just start to find your balance, right? Like Geshe Michael will often use an analogy of the string. When you play music, a musical instrument, it can't be too tight or it'll break, or it can't be too loose because it won't play. So you find that middle way, right? Most of the studies that we do is about the middle way. And I also mean that, figuratively too. So just watch that. And if you do feel like you're in a place where you're giving yourself a hard time, reach out to your fellow Dharma brothers and sisters and talk about it. Because I think also just acknowledging the fact that you're here is huge. And you can start there and build. And not, like beat yourself up, be like, oh no, I did another stained thought. Because you have a lot. And they get more subtle as you go down. And ultimately what they're saying is that your thoughts cannot be unstained until you've actually had an experience of ultimate reality. It is not possible for you to actually have a pure thought in that way. And we'll talk about mixed karmas and what that means later on, but everything is mixed. Like even when you have the most purest thing, if your frame of reference, right, if what's coming out, the content of where your vision is coming out, or your perception or how you see the world is already somewhat tainted, which isn't a bad or a good thing. It's just the reality of the human condition that we have, right? That until you actually have these experiences that we call direct perception of emptiness or ultimate reality, you won't be able to do that. You won't be able to have an unstained thought, and that's okay, and that's why we're here. Well, the idea is to have a path and have teachings and tools to be able to get to starting to cultivate and having the karma to have those experiences at some point. And I will say too that it's not necessarily just working hard, and we'll talk about that too. It's not like studying harder makes it easier or will make it happen.
So automatic loving thoughts and action are still considered stained because they're not done like super consciously? Because that's what I'm getting lost.
Yeah, okay, so you
Someone's
can...
even doing something from objectively, like if you learn 100 people and all of them go, yeah, that was a loving thought.
Yes.
A loving action.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
To me, that seems like it's unstained.
Yeah.
But I don't know how this is.
Sure. So we'll go into it more about what intentions look like and what that means. It doesn't mean that your motivation of loving someone or doing something that's caring or loving or genuine is disingenuine. But what it does mean is that if you don't within the Tibetan Buddhist, right, from where the framework that we're talking about, if you don't have an understanding of where things really come from and how things really work, then even your motivation is going to be tainted. It's going to be stained. It's going to be mixed. It's a mixed karma is what we call it. It's you don't just have one pure karma of good and bad, right? There's other things that are mixed into that. And so it means that your intention, you can go into it with the best intention possible. But if your worldview is still coming from a certain place, right, there might be other aspects of it too that's in there. That's like, you're doing it because you do care, but you want recognition. Or you do care, but you feel kind of bad. Or, like that's just like a really obvious kind of gross, like when not disgusting, but kind of gross reality of what we experience. Yeah? Okay.
So once you have the direct perception of emptiness, is it all unstained from there, or is that the only thing that's unstained?
We are going to talk about that later this course. We'll go deeper into it. Yeah. Because we can just spend all day on stained and unstained. Yes.
Were you talking about like actively engaging in self-kindness and self-love in order to prevent yourself from being too hard on yourself?
Yeah. Okay. I can take that. Yes. That sounds good. I like the way you interpret it. Yes. Yeah. For sure. I think that I'm only bringing this up because when we start getting into ways of how we're categorizing and saying, how we're elevating ourselves or working, it's harder and doing certain things in our practice. I just want everyone here to realize that, and what I've observed in my own practice and other Dharma brothers and sisters too, we just get really hard on each other. And it's already hard enough. So I'm just saying, like, as you go through the next 9 weeks of karma, and some of it will be really meaty and you'll really want to apply it and look at it and see, just give yourself a break a little bit, and have loving kindness for yourself and be compassionate to yourself and do the best you can. And some of the stuff you may not understand completely, and some of it you will know tons of it, and it will just make so much sense. And you just do the best you can. That's all. Yeah. Instead of like, this was stained and this was not stained. And I don't know. I've seen stuff like that. I've seen like relationships too. Like partners fighting, like that was a stained thing. And I'm like, oh my God, that is not why we're doing this, Yes. Sure.
I think one of the things that I think of, it's kind of to maybe go off of what Henry said actually, is that I think more about the result of the karma. So like, if you're doing something that's outside of completely understanding the emptiness of yourself, the object that you're doing it to, and the action, it still can result in some sort of suffering for you.
Yeah.
So it's not like stained, your mind is bad. It's just that because there's still a bit of misunderstanding present, like you could still potentially suffer in the future. Actually, you will definitely suffer a little bit in the future. So like, even if you love someone so much, and you're giving and you're giving and you're giving, if that emptiness, if the wisdom is not inside that motivation, then there will still be something. Like the loved one will die. You will die. Right? So it's like, it's not that your love isn't pure too. Like it could be that your love isn't totally pure, but then that there's suffering that comes next if we don't understand emptiness. That's kind of, I hope I didn't confuse it more, but that's kind of how I think of it.
We have 9 more weeks. We'll get there. I promise. We'll get to let's move on. Number 2, the presentation of the powers. Can we say ne nimpa?
Ne nipa.
Wangpo Tempa.
Wangpo tempa.
Again, ne nipa.
Ne nipa.
Wangpo Tempa.
Wangpo tempa.
The presentation of the powers, it will be speaking specifically to the senses, so the faculties of perception and senses. It's really about the sense powers, or sometimes we'll call it the mental functions. So the 8 books of Abhidharma Kosha, they start with, like in the first chapter, it's going to be stain phenomena, or stain versus unstain. It elaborates even further in the second chapter, moving into more detail what that means, the powers of your senses. And so we start building here. Okay. The third one is the presentation of the suffering world. The Tibetan is Ne Supa, Jigten Nempa. Again, Ne Supa, Jigten Nempa. Or Tempa, sorry. Tempa. So it's the suffering world, or sometimes you'll see it as the perishable world. It's a description of all the realms. People love the realms. Who is suffering, where they're suffering, how do planets come about, what constitutes a suffering world versus not, how many levels of hells are there, what are hungry ghosts, how many types of ghosts are there, how long do they live, what's the bardo, all that stuff, the cosmological elaboration of things. That's where this chapter focuses on. The fourth one, the presentation of karma. Can we say Ne Shipa, Le Tempa? Again, Ne Shipa, Le Tempa. And so this one is going to describe where the suffering world comes from and proves that the world is from karma and not from a creator. So that's where you're going to see I don't know if there's a distinct difference now, right? It's not, the world isn't made by a god or by a creator. It's made from karma. And so this is where it starts to go into that. Where does everything come from? And it disproves the creator. And speaks to, in this system, right, the real source of all things. Where things really come from. Okay. The fifth chapter is going to be about the presentation of the mental afflictions. What are mental afflictions? Obstacles.
Things that bug me.
Things that bug you. So anything that disrupts your state of mind, of peace. Anything that disrupts the peaceful state of mind or its natural state. You know, when we first started the meditation and I was speaking about your natural state, it's the undisturbed state. You know, our mind is actually disturbed all the time. It's like always agitated, right? So a mental affliction is the things that disrupt the peaceful state of flow in your mind. Can we say Ne Nangpa?
Ne nangpa.
Tragya Tenpa?
Tragya tenpa.
Again, Ne Nangpa?
Ne nangpa.
Tragya Tenpa.
Tragya tenpa.
Okay. And so this is going to be about how bad thoughts motivate karma. So now, what that basically means for you and all of us is that it's not your actions that necessarily create karma. Now you have your mind, your afflictions. I shouldn't say bad thoughts, your afflictions. How your afflictions motivate your karma, okay? What's the motivating force behind those deeds? And how does that impact your karma? Okay. Number 6, the presentation of the person and the path. Can we say Ne Drupa?
Ne Drupa,
Kangsang Dang,
Kansang
Lam Tempa.
Lam Tempa,
Ne Drukpa,
Ne Drupa,
Kangsang Dang,
Kansang
Lam Tempa.
Lam Tempa.
And this is the person that refers to an advanced practitioner. It's not just like any person, but an advanced practitioner. And the path means to wisdom. So it's about an advanced practitioner and wisdom. It's really about it's the path of how to eliminate your afflictions.
You said that again.
It's really about how to eliminate your afflictions. It's the path of an advanced practitioner, which is really the path of eliminating your afflictions.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So is every thought that we have is an afflicted thought?
No. Not every thought. It's the thoughts that disrupt your state of peace. So joyful thoughts would not be considered an afflicted thought. Although we did have a debate once in this class about happiness and joy and whether it was considered an affliction, right?
Well, it's the confusion between a stained thought and
unstained.
and a joyous thought.
Uh-huh.
It's a joyous thought, but unless you're enlightened,
Yeah.
it's still stained.
Yeah.
But it's not a mental affliction.
It's usually thoughts that are negative. Your negative thoughts are usually your afflictions. Your kleshas. Sometimes we'll hear it in Sanskrit as klesha, Klesha. But the thoughts that disrupt you in a negative and it has a negative impact are the ones that we call mental afflictions.
Sometimes in psychology they're called intrusive thoughts.
Great. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. It's fun. It's so interesting because you don't think of joy as being like an intrusive thought. You're like, of course you can come in, have a seat, right? Stay. Make yourself at home. Actually, I don't know. Sometimes afflictions too. I'm like, I feel that way about afflictions. Anyway, that's a whole other.
I have a question. Is the problem the thoughts or is it our reaction to the thoughts?
Yes.
Because a joyful thought is just a thought, but it's the reaction to it that's the problem.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Because remember what I will just leave it at because we'll go into it. But remember when we talked, I think it was course 1, about how your karma is forced upon you. Do you remember that?
I didn't.
You didn't take it? Okay. We'll talk about it. But you know when an affliction arises?
Yes.
How much control do you have of that actually arising? You don't. You're like so screwed. You're like, it's already done, right? Like there's nothing you can do at that moment when that happens. And you know when that happens, right? You're just sitting and it just like literally erupts like a zit, right? And you didn't even touch it. And you're like, what's going on, right? That you don't have a choice of. But the way in which you mitigate having that reoccur is in the way in which you react to it. So there is power. This isn't just like, oh, your life is shit and you're so screwed and like good luck, and we're just going to all live out our life until, like we'll see who did less bad deeds or evil deeds. It's not like that, but there is a way of how you're going to perpetuate that. But yeah, just short version is that you don't have that choice of when that erupts, but you do have a choice of, as you start to understand the laws of karma and you enhance your practice, you do have a way in which how to handle how that's going to grow and manifest and be more of or less of. There's ways to do that. There's techniques, I guess, is a way to say it. Yeah? Number 7, the presentation of wisdom. Wait, I'm going to also say too, Erin, I think that just even being able to identify that happens is a huge thing. Most people don't even know that. They don't. Most people just think that's just the way it is. Like, and actually there's almost a sense of like, it wasn't even, there's no accountability for that. It's just a circumstance that right? So the fact that you can even identify, is it the actual thought or is it the reaction like that? that dichotomy is great that you're seeing that, because that's not a conversation that most people in this world have, noticing it. So that's good.
Could you give an example of what exactly you're referring to?
In terms of
thinking something and then realizing that's not the right thing to think? Is that what you're saying? Realizing that's an unclean thought or something?
I'm going to wait to hold off on it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to wait, because then we're going to, yeah.
Okay.
But we will cover it in this course. Okay, number 7, the presentation of wisdom. The Tibetan is Ne Dumpa, Yesh Tempa. Ne Dumpa, Yesh Tempa. So this is more detail of wisdom. It describes the different kinds of wisdom. It also speaks to why we study wisdom and how, in fact, the way in which you destroy your afflictions or remove your afflictions is by obtaining wisdom. So a lot of the times there'll be techniques which will teach you of how to mitigate your afflictions or to lessen it or to find tools, but you can't actually remove them completely until you have wisdom, right? Which is what we talked about. Yes.
Do you know which word in the Tibetan is wisdom there?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeshe.
Like yeshe. I would think that would be like yeshe. But I don't know.
Yes, I do.
But I would be I don't know, but I would guess. Number 8, the presentation of balanced meditation. The Tibetan is Ne Gepa, Nyompar Jukpa Tempa. Again, Ne Gepa, Nyompar Jukpa Tempa. And this describes the qualities, the unique qualities of the Buddha. It's about balanced mind. It's about balanced mind and the qualities of the Buddha. Because you're always balancing being too bright and too, like it's about being too tight and too loose, right? Or too bright or too, I don't know. It's about the different intensities. Or too dull, like we've used that word, right? Too dull and too bright or open, agitated, right? Those are like the two different. So it's about that balance of that middle way. Yeah. Sorry, dull and coarse is what we used to. Like, remembering. Okay, good. 8. All right. We're gonna take a break. Actually, you know what? Oh, before I do that, I'm just gonna give you a quick overview. I forgot. Sorry. Let's see if that. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to give you like a quick rundown of the 8. So we're gonna start with reality of existence, which was suffering. It's about, the stained and unstained. What's flawed, what's not. Then we move on to how things occur and are caused. This is about the sense perceptions, how the mind works, perception. Just kind of giving a quick, it helps me to see it visually this way. If it doesn't help you, don't write it. Do what makes sense to you. Then we move into the realms, which we talked about, right? The suffering world, or the different realms and the planets. Then we move on to karma, which talks about cause and result and no creator. There is no God in the system, in the Catholic Christian sense. How many of you were raised in a Catholic Christian? Yeah. Judeo. Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's like with a God, a creator. Yeah. It's such a very interesting thing to be raised that way and then to be studying Buddhism. Definitely are not off the hook very often. Mental afflictions we move into. Looking at causations, what that means. Then we move into how to remove your afflictions. And then wisdom as being an antidote. And then ending it with balanced mind.
These are the chapters.
These are the different chapters
So this isn't the course.
of Abhidharma Kosha. We'll be touching upon a lot of it.
Yeah.
We're reading all of those chapters?
Yeah, it's going to be commentaries of it.
Right, so we're reading the Dalai Lama's commentary.
Yes,
on
that's
it.
right. Yeah, and you'll have snippets. So it's not the entire text, but it'll just be snippets that you'll be reading. Yeah.
Is that a smiley face?
It is. It's like, I don't know. Just happy thoughts.
Will that be on the quiz as well?
Yeah, just doing the emoji.
The emoji. Okay, then we're going to go into the 4 books. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll end with the 4 books, or the requirements, of the Buddhist books, or of what a Buddhist book is. And then just break out into our little groups and do a quick check-in. I'll have a question for you to ask each other, and then close the evening. Sound good? Okay, see you back in 10. Okay, so we're going to go through 4 requirements of a Buddhist book. Basically, it's saying that it doesn't matter who published it, if it was like a famous publisher or a famous monk or a famous guru who's in town or any of that. There are just 4 very simple things that they're saying in the scriptures that qualify a Buddhist book. The first one is juja. Can we say juja?
Juja.
And this is the subject matter, meaning that the subject matter must be meaningful. They do not define what meaningful means, but I'm just letting you know they're saying it must be meaningful. In the context of the Abhidharma Kosha, right, the subject matter of Abhidharma is wisdom, right, and understanding what wisdom means. So that would be one example of what a meaningful subject matter would be. 2, can we say gupa?
Gupa.
And this means purpose. You can see like people getting tattoos of gupa on their bodies. Purpose. Sorry, what? Were you going to say something?
I was thinking Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop.
Oh, yeah. See, or close, right? I know. Oh, Gwyneth. Yeah, gupa. Purpose. There's a purpose. Right? So the first one is meaningful subject, and the second one is purpose. So in the Abhidharma, it would be, the purpose would be to plant a seed for wisdom. It's like the 4 stages of brand strategy. It's like what we do. What is your mission and your vision? And where does it come from?
Was the first requirement the subject? Or?
The first one was the subject, that it needs to be a meaningful subject.
Okay.
That's right. The second one is purpose. There needs to be a purpose in the scripture or the book. The third one is nigyu.
Nigyu.
Say it again, nigyu.
Nigyu.
And that there's an ultimate goal. It needs to provide you information of how to achieve something, or that you're moving towards your ultimate goal. So if you have classes that you go to or teachings that you're sitting in, or you read a book, that first of all, the content is just like not meaningful at all, right? But let's say it is meaningful and there's purpose, but there's no direction, there's no path, there's no way in which you're going to move closer to that goal. That would not be considered within this system technically a Buddhist scripture if it was couched as a Buddhist book. Okay? Like, sometimes I see those small little Buddhist books that's like people put in their bathrooms, like words of wisdom. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they're like, it's a Buddhist book. I'm like, no, actually it's not, but that's cool. It has snippets of it. It's not true that it is, but it would be considered a Buddhist book, right?
Not according to this.
Not according to this.
The subject matter has to be of Buddhism, right?
It should be of Buddhism, yes, of course. Yeah.
Because any self-help book.
Sure.
is kind of-
Yes, that's correct.
I guess I want to say that I've been to retreats that the teacher specifically says it's not a Buddhist retreat. So I would just sort of back off and say maybe it's about how to live.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to put a label Buddhist.
Yeah.
On it because it's not going to appeal to some people.
There are times where that does happen. Is that what you're saying? Where you'll be at a retreat? So what you're saying is that.
I'm saying that I'm not sure if the label Buddhist has to be on something.
Oh, I see. Yes. But the content, for it to be considered a Buddhist book, the content does need. I think it would need. It's fair to say that it would need to be Buddhist. Yeah, Buddhism in that context. It doesn't mean that you can't teach content and repackage it that's not technically Buddhism, but the source of what you're getting your information from would technically be Buddhist. How you present it is a different thing. But the source in itself would be considered Buddhist if it were saying it was a Buddhist book. Does that make sense? Okay. Last one, Drelwa. Again, Drelwa. And simply means the relationship between the prior. Oh, I said prior there. That's a typo. 3. I'll change that meaning before I give you the. So basically saying that the subject matter needs to lead to its purpose, which therefore needs to lead to its ultimate goal. That the 3 are related to each other. I know it sounds really basic, but you would be surprised. Noga, did you? Huh? 3. Prior 3. Not there. Okay, that's it for tonight. So we have a few more minutes. So what I'd like for everyone to do, thanks for hanging in there, you guys. The first class, again, is the driest. It does get sexier from here on out, which means the heat is more on me. I know, but it's true, it does. And this is like the class everybody wants to talk about. I'd like for us to go into our groups. If you don't have a group, just look around and see if you can be in a group or formulate your own group. But basically, for those of you that weren't here last week, this group is I have to find a better name. I'll think about it. For the moment, I'm calling it an accountability group. Sounds really terrible. Not fun. But it's your people. They're your people, They're the people that are there for you to support you and to check in. And this will be also a group that you're going to be doing your quizzes in when we come in next week, so that you get group quizzes, open book, make it as easy as possible. But it's also a group where you should use it to connect. And so it's a little bit more intimate. I think some groups last week created WhatsApp groups and channels and did that. Some you do an email chain, whatever it is. But really what it is meant for too is if one of you aren't showing up for class and someone's kind of gone off the radar, check in with your fellow, accountability partner and see how they're doing. Or if there's one of you that's going through something and wants to know how to address something or is confused or wants to talk about any of the content, how it relates to your life, those are the people that you can go to. Okay? So the question I'd like to put out there is for you to share with each other just one thing. You don't have to make it a big thing, but just how was the meditation for you today? Right? Were you able, last week we shared one thing that we wanted to change in our life, I think, right? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And so today, seeing that we went from starting with relaxation, And I did that specifically because one thing that I have found for myself, and I think for a lot of urbanites, is that we're so tight and intense all the time. And then you think you're just going to be like intense and then go sit on the cushion and be like so relaxed. And it doesn't always work that way. And for myself, for a long time, my meditations were also very intense. Like I just brought my intensity from the outer world onto my cushion. And for a very long time, and I've shared this story with many of you, it was not uncommon for me to be meditating like so stressed out and like frowning and so serious, you know. And I just remember this moment where like this area got so, it was just like, that's not what it's supposed to be happening, you know. And that's when a teacher of mine said to me, why don't you start doing meditation in supine and lie down? And I just thought I thought it was a joke, actually. And then I thought that he just put me back into like basic 101 because I was like judging myself. I'm like, I'm more advanced than that. I do solo meditation retreats. But what I've realized from doing supine pose is how when you do meditate, if you want to have realizations, you must relax. You cannot do it by being uptight. You just can't. That is not in scripture, but I am telling you from my own experience and from so many other practitioners I speak to, it's the same thing. You've got to chill out, okay? And so when we first started, that's where we're going to start every class. It's just chill out and relax. Start there first and then start to, like, imagine trying to do yoga being all intense. It's not going to work. It's terrible for any of you that have done that, right? And when you're meditating, you are moving your subtle body. So you do need to be relaxed, and that is a practice. And that's not, and if you want to make your meditation simply like, I'm going to do 10 minutes a day and just relaxing and laying down and feeling my breath and just getting a sense of being in my body, which we don't really do in a city like this at all. Do that. And that's great. And that's awesome. And that's a great start. And if you can even feel that, that is outstanding. And don't think that that's beneath you by any means, okay? So we started with relaxation, and then we went into vision of what would bring you the most amount of joy right now? What do you vision that to be? And what I'd like is for you guys to go into your groups and just share what that was like. Was it easy? Was it hard? Do you see it? Do you not? Do you get it? Did you get lost? Were you annoyed that there was someone talking? Whatever, you know, whatever it is, share that so that each of you know where you're kind of at. And then the goal is that as you start to progress, right, which you will, if you show up every week and you touch base, you will progress. I won't promise how much, but you will. You'll start to see where everyone's at, and you'll start to see a little bit of growth, okay? And that's exciting, I think. Okay, so we'll just do that for 10 minutes. I'll let you know when we're done. I'll give you 10-minute kind of warning, and then we'll wrap up with closing and dedication. Okay? All right. Oh, anyone who hasn't given me your email address, please come by and sign up so that you can get my emails and you and I can be in touch and you can get all the goods, the Dharma goods. All right. We're going to close. I hope that was helpful and you got to connect and learn something about your accountability partners. We're going to close, and then at the very end, we'll just end with a very quick dedication, which looks like it's in the form of a meditation. Okay?
Sashi Kuki Jin Mento Tram Rirab Lichir Yinde Yempagi Sangye Shingu Mite Uwargi Rokun Anda Shingla Shupasho Yam
Sunam Yeshe Sosokshin Sunam Yeshe Lejumwe Dhamma Kuni Toparsho.
You can just sit comfortably with your eyes closed. Just take a few rounds of your breath. Just relaxing. Being back in your body. Just check and see if there are any subtle differences that you can notice or observe with the way your body feels, your mind. And then take a moment to just acknowledge the effort you took to come to class tonight. To come to class, to stay in class, to participate. And then commend yourself for your efforts, for your patience, for your openness. And then think about the vision you had earlier in the meditation today. And if you can bring to mind one other person, maybe they're in your group, or maybe someone you know, but identify one other person who wants what you want. Maybe not specifically what you want, but maybe the way in which it would make you feel. Doesn't have to be someone you like, even better if that's the case. Try to see this person in front of you. And dedicate your efforts, your time, your motivation for coming to this class. Dedicate all the goodness to this person, wishing for them to be able to fulfill their vision, their desires, and hopes and wants. Send them that joy that you so too want. Thank you, everyone. Really beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Really nice. It was really nice.